Welcome, my freshmen. All right, I'm going to try to make this in less than 30 minutes, but the Enlightenment as a government teacher is an exciting time. Like we've been talking about in class, this time period will take place really 1715, ironically enough, the same year the Sun King, Louis XIV, the symbol of absolutism, dies. And the Enlightenment basically is this time period where philosophers start challenging kings and the government. It's a direct response to the age of absolutism and absolute power and rule, where really do the people have that much say? And we'll talk about this. Why is it called the Age of Reason? Because it's based on, right, applying principles of science, logic, and reason. Less, religion and superstition, more, right, science-based. Okay, we talked about this in class, this changing mindset from the Middle Ages when we had feudalism, and then we have this Renaissance, right, with humanism and other Renaissance values, where the focus starts to become, right, on the individual, the intellectual. The ability to read, the printing press. So we start kind of challenging like the old order, and feudalism starts to change and morph, evolve, shift. There's a middle class that arises, right? We talked about all of this. Then with the Renaissance, they're challenging that old order. With Renaissance values, right, we have, this age of Reformation, where now what's being challenged is the church, the church, specifically the Roman Catholic Church. And we will see divisions of new types of Christianity, right? Protestantism. Within Protestantism, you learned about Martin Luther and what makes a Lutheran Protestant. You saw what was John Calvin and a Calvinist Protestant. In France, that's called a Huguenot. And we also talked about Anglican Protestantism, or the Church of England, and that strange evolution. So what's left to be challenged now? We've had a scientific revolution. So now they're going to start focusing on challenging absolutism. It's a direct response, the kings and government. So the Enlightenment, this time period of the 1715, some say it started a little bit earlier, in the mid to late 1600s, as some of these philosophers like Thomas Hobbes and John Locke, right? They lived through the English Civil War. So some say it can date, back to the early, late 1600s. I say late 1600s. 715 is what many sources historically say, throughout like the 1800s. And it is a response to people being ruled by absolute monarchs, not having a say, not having any power. People realize they want rights. So a response and counter to the divine right theory is this thought process of God isn't so influential in terms of the daily functioning. This is more of using natural reason, natural law, using science to try to rationalize and use logic for religion. So many of like our founding fathers in America, some were secular, non-religious, some were deists, right? They believed in this religious philosophy, and it's based on natural law, where God is kind of like a clockmaker. He's the mechanic. He creates the universe, but then, right, he kind of takes a step back. He takes a step back from his lofty cloud, as you can see here, as I'm kind of mocking, to let the world live and run on its own. So this is a counter to the divine right theory. Like, no, just God didn't choose you to rule. He created the universe, right? But mankind, right? Humans, and the world can live, run, and operate on its own. So it's non-ritual based faith using reason, logic. It's this promotion of religious tolerance. Let's not be jerks to other branches of, Christianity, or, people that are Jewish or Muslim. What is natural law? I'm hoping you learned about this in science class, but it's rules that are discoverable by reason, right? They govern the scientific forces, so why not use them to understand, right, society, economics, and politics? And they are used today. There are rules, right, based on scientific forces. Now, we use natural law when we are studying, right, society, right, economics, politics. less superstitious, less just blind faith in some Catholic organization, and now more logic, smarts. Okay. So, Thomas Hobbes versus John Locke, two English philosophers. Thomas Hobbes, as you previously learned, pretty negative, pessimistic view. He lived through this English Civil War, which was bloody, right? The Cavaliers and Charles I, the king, and his wealthy nobles versus Parliament, Oliver Cromwell, and the Roundheads. The Roundheads win the war, and they decapitate and kill, execute Charles I. And this is in 1649. So Thomas Hobbes lives through this. So he thinks, we are unable to rule ourselves as humans. We are, brutish, nasty, and short. We will lie, cheat, and steal. And we need an absolute ruler, right? A monarch to rule over us because we can't do it ourselves. John Locke, on the other hand, thinks much differently. Also an English philosopher, and you probably learned about him in 8th grade, he has a different view. He says, we're all born with this tabula rasa, or this blank slate, clean slate. We're all born equal. And he thinks, generally speaking, man is naturally good. And he says the purpose of government is to protect natural rights. So, and we'll talk about social contract theory and why we as people were giving up our rights to the government. Why? So that government can protect our natural rights to life, to liberty, to property. Okay, so I know you learned about John Locke. I don't need to go on and on about him. He is the one that comes up with natural rights, life, liberty, property. Yes, Thomas Jefferson loved John Locke and really all of his principles in the book, Two Treatises of Government. I'm sure no one's read that. Might be a cure for insomnia. But you will see this is definitely right, an influence in our Declaration of Independence, where we are guaranteed as Americans, right, all men are created equal. Don't get me started on that. I'll wait till government class. But he says we all have, right, the natural rights, or I'm sorry, I can't even pronounce this word, inalienable rights, meaning they can't be taken away from us. Life, liberty, and he changes property to pursuit of happiness. So this is one example of how, it's directly reflected in our government. Natural rights. We have it. Look at our Declaration of Independence. Look at us being ruled by law. Government protects our natural rights, or they're supposed to. And if they don't, we as the people to back out of our social contract and overthrow them, create a new government. Life, liberty, property, Johnny Locke. So I thought this would be helpful. Okay, it's a little chart. Maybe when this is turned into an ed puzzle, you're going to use this for a few questions. So in terms of Hobbes versus Locke, basically Hobbes thinks government is used to protect us from ourselves. We're our own worst enemy. And Locke says, no. The purpose of government is to protect our natural rights. We can govern ourselves, right? Sovereignty or authority, Locke says, is in us, innately in us, right? The people. Hobbes says, no. Sovereignty or authority comes from the monarch. And can that monarch or the government's power be limited? No. Okay, where Locke says yes. Okay, and so there's some interesting, compare and contrast here. If I had a normal year and a normal class period, we would have a mini debate on this. Sorry, folks. Okay, in France, and you just saw Thomas Hobbes and John Locke are English philosophers. These are the philosophes or the French philosophers. I don't talk about all of them. Like, for example, Voltaire. I don't know if I have a slide on him. I hope I do. I'm not sure if I do. Where is Voltaire? Right up here. This is the Baron de Montesquieu. Baron is just a nobility title. Super important. Checks and balances, separation of powers. Voltaire, freedom of speech. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, popular sovereignty and social contract. So we're going to talk about Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And then at the bottom here, this is Denis Diderot. I don't even know if I really talk about him, but he's kind of important. I don't know. He creates the first encyclopedia. Kind of a big deal. So a philosophe is just a French philosopher, a French Enlightenment thinker who will really help us Okay, we use all of their principles, forming Western democracy. And eventually France will embrace their own philosophes' principles, right? French Revolution. Next unit, folks. So let's talk about a few, okay? This is one of my favorites, Montesquieu. I know it's a fun one to spell. We are like not original at all. We take this French philosophe and we steal all of his ideas, which are great ideas. Here's one. Government shouldn't just be a king. One branch, a monarch who has all the power? No. We need to have a separation of powers. So he advocates for 3 different branches of government. Sound familiar? We have an executive branch, the president. We have a legislative branch, Congress. We have a judicial branch, Supreme Court, and all the federal, right, and inferior courts. So from the state, local level to the federal level, we have 3 branches of government. Talk about embracing separation of powers. Okay. We also have, taken from Montesquieu, checks and balances. So one branch, let's say Congress, has the authority to limit another branch, let's say the president and the executive branch, from growing, too strong. So checks and balances, and each branch gets unique powers to check on, right, the power of another branch. For example, Congress, the legislative branch, makes the laws. But the president has to sign, right, that law and it becomes official, or veto it. The president can veto a law passed by Congress. That's a check. Okay, it goes back to Congress, and if 2/3 of Congress, which is a 2-house legislature, it's a lot of people, if 2/3 are like, no, we need this to pass, okay, we're on board, then Congress can override that president's veto or rejection of the law. So talk about checks and balances right there. Presidents in the executive branch appoint Supreme Court justices for the judicial branch. They actually appoint all federal judges. Okay, talk about a check and power. Congress given the power to impeach or remove a federal official, whether it's a judge, a president, or another member of Congress. Okay, so these are all, we have so many examples of checks and balances. So I'm hoping you heard what I'm saying, because I guarantee there's going to be a question in just a second on it. Hope you get it right. All right, let's chat about social contract. Kids really struggle with this, but honestly, I don't really think it's that tough. So social contract theory, what is the origin? Like, where does government come from? Okay, the people. And how much authority should a state have over an individual, or a country have, right? Federal government have. So social contract theory, this is what it is. We as people, okay, people, give some of our power, our rights to the government, right? We follow laws that they create. The government's sole purpose is to protect the people's, right, natural rights. Anytime, okay, we're giving power to the government and the government is misusing that power, we as the people have the ability to back out of our social contract and replace or overthrow the government. Whether it be, an absolute monarch, which these countries would embrace social contract theory, or a president, okay, because we have social contract theory. This is what we believe. We don't believe in divine right theory in America, where God chooses. No, we believe in social contract theory. So where does it come from, right? It comes from a combination of men, really John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Okay, so social contract theory, we give up a little bit of our rights, right? We follow the laws. I can't just go around murdering whoever I want, and I can't go 100 on the highway. I have to follow, right, speeding limits. Again, it's to protect people. Okay, but anytime I'm giving up those rights, right, and then the government is not protecting my civil liberties, my civil rights, my natural rights, we as a people, according to the social contract, we can back out and overthrow the government for its misuse of power. So like I said, Jean-Jacques Rousseau contributes, he writes a book on the social contract, and he basically says that the entire society, whatever we're talking about, right, agrees to be governed by the general will, okay, meaning what the people want. The general will of the people, okay, what the people want. And anytime, right, the government is not protecting our rights and they're misusing and abusing, oppressing, their power. Okay, if countries believe and practice social contract theory, like England does now, like we do, then the people can back out of that contract, right? Because we're governed by our general will to, replace that government. And there's a lot more to it. I don't expect any of you to read the books. Another very common principle we talk about, if you have Mr. Fanning, he'll call it POPSOV, so I'll call it POPSOV. It's easier to spell than popular sovereignty. Remember, sovereignty means authority over. So Jean-Jacques Rousseau believes in popular sovereignty, which means let the people decide. The people are the only source of governmental power. Power is received by the people, right? Giving their power. Typically, right? How are they giving, right? Through elections. Popular sovereignty. We vote. We have elections. So how does the will of the people be represented? We elect and vote for people because we have a representative democracy here. And they go and do the work of government for us. So popular sovereignty, right? People are the only source of governmental power. I call it let the people decide. The will of the people. How do they decide? Elections and voting, at least in our country and many others. Everyone loves to talk about money. So there's also an economic, he's actually Scottish, Adam Smith, and he wants to talk about the economy. And so he's going to be all about, and he writes his book, Wealth of Nations in 1776. Interesting year. Okay, if individuals are free to pursue their own self-interest, I want to start a business, I should be able to, with little to no governmental interference. Society as a whole benefits. So this principle is called laissez-faire, which is French for hands off. Okay, government should allow the natural free play of business, of the natural, economic forces. When you see economic, think money. Okay, money. If I want to open up a business and a barbershop and make tons of money and not pay my employees, right? I have that power. I have that authority, and the government shouldn't interfere. So this kind of hands-off approach is definitely rooted in capitalism, which is the economic system we have. We'll talk about that at the end of the year if we get there. Definitely, you'll learn about it in U.S. and government. All right, let's talk about a woman here. Okay, she writes her book, A Vindication of the Rights of the Woman, in 1792. And for the time, oh my God, it was so scandalous. It was so revolutionary. In fact, Jean-Jacques Rousseau did not have very nice things to say about our girl here, Mary Wollstonecraft. She is a woman's right activist. Talk about like the first feminist, and she really isn't, but still. Okay, she's calling out our sexist society in 1792. Like, were women even authors then? Excuse me. I've been doing a lot of talking this morning. So in her book, okay, she's calling out really England's sexist society and saying that the society that they have is creating gentle domestic brutes. Yeah, referring to wives as gentle domestic brutes. Basically meaning, right, they're living a confined or isolated existence. They don't work. They aren't educated. And it makes women frustrated. And it transforms them into tyrants, right? Angry, nagging, upset tyrants over their children and their servants. And the way to fix this is to let women be educated. Let them read books, right? Educational reform. Let them go to school. Give them the same access to education as men. How revolutionary. Again, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, not happy with this. All right, now we're going to talk about England and France going to war with each other. We're actually going to talk about the first global war. It's not World War I. It's known as the 7 Years' War. You probably learned it in North America as the French and Indian War. So both England and France at this time believe in nationalism. And what is nationalism? We will talk about this in person at length. It's not just being patriotic. There's a difference between patriotism, just being proud of your country, right, and nationalism. It's excessive pride in one's country where you literally think you are the best country. You have like a superiority complex. Okay, and you look down at other countries. And what we have here is we have England and France building global empires, and they are dominating for control. Who's more powerful? Who's going to make more money? Okay, here's a map of Europe before the 7 Years' War. Kind of a mess. I'll let you pause at this, and I'm going to move on. But in the video, you can pause it. Okay, take a look at the map. England or Great Britain versus France. Other countries are going to get involved, like Russia, like Austria, and Prussia, okay, or like Northern Germany for present day. So it started in 1756 and will end right in 1763 with the Treaty of Paris. There are many Treaty of Parises. So basically what will happen, I keep saying it's France versus England, but really it's England and Prussia. What do you know? Two Protestant countries taking on France, Catholic Austria, and then Russia will also get involved. And Russia's the outlier. They practice Orthodox Christianity. Look at, you can see it's all over, okay? So you can see in blue, think England, Prussia. Green, think France, Austria. Okay, you can see here, fighting will take place North America. Fighting will take place in the Caribbean. Fighting will take place in India, as well as Asia, right, the Philippines. It's a mess. So England and France are basically fighting for global domination and control. Like I just said, in the Caribbean, they're going to be fighting over trade, right, with the sugar plantations. They see sugar as a way to make money, and they want it. They're going to fight there. They're going to fight in North America as the British want to expand westward. And guess what? That land is French owned. Okay, so yeah, there's going to be a French and Indian War. And I believe you learned that in, I don't even know, 8th grade maybe? And I think you know the outcome. They're also going to fight in India. In India, it was more so proxy war, as they will back rival Indian princes, and it's all over trade. Okay, they want to control India. It's basically that gateway point, that access to China and the Asian trade market. So controlling India is huge. The conflict in North America is known as the French and Indian War. You can see here, this is right, the colonies. In blue is all land owned by France. And if you're like, hey, what's this weird orange? That's Spain. Then I'm going to kind of, yes, Spain was fighting with France. I don't want to confuse things, though. They're kind of insignificant. So you can see at least the Spanish lands here, okay? What will happen with Florida, Louisiana. So the Spanish lands in the south, you can see, right, the original colonies. And then all of this land, look how much land France owned, okay? Not bad. Oh, and if you didn't know, we want to push westward, obviously. So we know that, I'm so sorry for coughing, guys. Allergy season. We know that France and the natives were looking to stop this British expansion. Okay, it's their land, and obviously France took some of that, but they're teaming up together to take on, right, England and these British colonists that are living in America. Their conflict in the Caribbean, like I said, it's a trade war, and it's over sugar and the plantation there. It's all about money, money, money. So France will tighten control over sugar plantations, kind of toying with England. It'll make England mad or Great Britain mad. So basically what they're going to do is they pass the Navigation Acts, England. And so all goods, right, imports coming in and exports going out, 2 British colonies must be on English ships through English-controlled ports. So we can't use any of the French ships or French ports. So it's like my stuff versus your stuff, okay? And it really becomes more isolated, and it really is a trade war here. In India, like I said, it's kind of like a proxy warfare. So you can see France have, they're pretty advantageous here. They have a lot of land. The Mughal Empire, they will lose control of India. And both France and Great Britain want control here. It's all about the money, like I said. So France will side with the losing side, the Prince of Bengal. Great Britain will side with a different rival prince. And what do you know? With the help of Robert Clive, a British admiral, he will defeat the side of the French, the Prince of Bengal in India, and it really will end French control in India. And this will create England's power to grow and grow and grow, and they will create the East India trading, the British East India Trading Company, and they're going to make so much money, like so much money. So you're going to see loss for France, loss for France, loss for France. Gain for England, right? Gain for England. You can another map, pause on this and take a look and see. So this 7 Years' War, right? 762, we're getting tired here. We are getting tired. So the 7 Years' War will come to an end. It is a global war. And in fact, don't forget, fighting took place in Europe. I just didn't focus on it. I wanted to talk about the other parts of the world. 761, King George III, he basically was just tiring of war. Okay, he was sick of it. It's expensive, and he was winning. And when you win all this land, you got to take care of it, and you have debt from the war, and we'll talk about it. Russia's going to peace out a year later. Okay, they're also on the losing side of things, so they will leave the alliance with Austria and France. And then in 1763, France and Austria will make peace with Prussia. And don't forget, Prussia, Protestant Prussia, is allied with Protestant England. So overall impact, Prussia and England win. Okay, they're the winning side. This is going to be the rise of British supremacy, right? The sun never sets on the British Empire, right? That's how expansive and dominant they're going to be, as well as Prussia will also gain some notoriety. They're going to be this strong military state, and eventually Prussia, it's not on the map now, it's going to become Germany. So this Treaty of Paris is in 1763, and it officially ends the 7 Years' War. And here are the winners, okay? England, as you can see with the English flag, England wins Canada from France. They also win Florida from Spain, removing their rivals, right, if you look at it, from the West and the North and the South. However, with these victories, okay, they accrued debt. So how are they going to pay off this debt? They're going to tax the American colonists, which will just set the stage for the Revolutionary War. All right, so that's the winners. The losers, okay? France loses Canada. France loses Louisiana to Spain. They're bitter, they're angry, they're resentful. So of course they're going to offer aid and support, especially after the Battle of Saratoga, against, their enemy, Great Britain or England, in our American Revolutionary War. So how will European expansion and global dominance influence the future? Our next unit, Age of Revolution. Okay, think Absolutism Island, guys. How many of you in that group, okay, the Absolutism group, I think it was group 1, how many of you said your chances of survival were slim and that you wanted to overthrow the ruler? Okay, especially if you were in my 3A class. So just think about that, and our next unit will be very brief. Okay, the American Revolution, and then in-depth French Revolution. We'll wrap it up with some Latin American revolutions and the Industrial Revolution, and it'll be over. 7 more classes, guys. Can you believe it? I'm under my time limit. Have a great one.